Okay. Thank you very much, and I would now like to call to order the Community Planning Committee meeting of November 27. Committee, are there any additions or questions about the agenda? Mary Lou?
Addition of the piece.
Thank you very much. And with that, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Councillor Gray, and seconded by Mary Little. All in favor? Thank you very much. We have one presentation tonight by Ms. Sarah Anthony, and after that we will have public participation. So.
Right, Sarah Anthony, Metchosin Road. So this is a presentation on housing for rural Metchosin. So over the past few years, the urgency to deal with the housing crisis has grown into a top priority for all levels of government, the media, and in people's lives. My presentation on tiny homes and RVs was a little over a year ago, and still we are seeing an increase in rental prices and homelessness. The conversation in our community continues to be fraught with controversy between the need for affordable housing in our community and the desire to continue to see Metchosin's rural landscape preserved. Some of us do not believe that this needs to be a compromise. There is a growing group of people in Metchosin who believe that our little town can be a small part of adding to the supply of affordable housing, and that we can do this without seeing Metchosin melt into the Langford metropolis. A few months ago, a small group started to meet to discuss housing issues and possible solutions in Metchosin. The group has been slowly and steadily growing. We all have different visions for how we see Metchosin's role in providing housing, but we all agree that there are options and that it is important for Metchosin to do what we can while still being a rural haven and contributing to the region's food security. So while this presentation is derived from ideas developed in the housing group, the commentary and opinions of those things are mine. So, sorry, I'm forgetting how to use this thing. So where we are now provincially. In April of this year, the BC government announced the Housing for the People Action Plan. Since then, there has been a lot of speculation about what that plan will look like. In Metchosin, there has certainly been a lot of concern about how the plan will apply to our municipality. As Bill 44 is still being crafted, it is difficult to say for certain. Difficult to say anything for certain, but we do seem to be seeing more specific policy come out as it goes along. So the proposed legislation, is that will permit one secondary suite or one laneway home, so like a detached, in all communities throughout BC. Second part is in most areas within municipalities of more than 5,000 people. These changes will also require bylaws to allow for 3 to 4 units permitted on lots currently zoned for single family and duplex use, depending on lot size. When you have a larger transit area, that is actually up to 6 units that will be allowed. So how would this affect Metchosin? So with the secondary suites, it seems like that's going to affect Metchosin, as it specifically notes in all communities throughout BC. And we had Ravi Callan's letter to the district on November 9th, saying that municipalities will be required to update their OCP. So as we are currently allowing secondary suites, it will likely mean amending the bylaw regarding lot size and maybe some other things we will see as it comes out, because we don't know about the unit size yet, I don't believe. For the 3 to 4 dwelling units, as of the current wording, municipalities with more than 5,000 people, this seems as though it will need to be implemented in Metchosin. My personal concern would be that this would have a negative impact on Metchosin, as we may see more developers buying properties in Metchosin and building 3 or 4 plexes. From looking at the draft of the amendments to Bill 44, which are a little confusing right now, it looks like there may be some kind of exemption for rural areas, but I'm not specifically sure if it applies to that and what it means in that context, so we'll have to see. I don't really think we're going to be impacted about the 6 dwelling units, as the wording is close to transit stops with frequent service, and as of right now, that isn't really us. So as for high density, I think I have another slide that mentions that. Given that we're not near mass transit, seems unlikely. I actually, not this weekend, but the weekend before, was at the BCNDP convention, and I heard David Eby very many times mention building high-density buildings near mass transit. So he kept saying that, so hopefully we would not be looking at that, but somebody sort of reminded me the other day, if they can't get land, we kind of unfortunately, well, fortunately for us, but maybe unfortunately in that situation, do have land. And so hopefully that won't come to that, but I think it's something we need to keep in our mind. In terms of the so-called naughty list, it's terrible phrasing, but in May 2023, the province had gave itself the authority to set housing targets for municipalities. In June, they released a list of 47 municipalities which they plan to set targets for and look more closely at housing needs. It does seem that Metchosin was selected for a reason. I kind of went through it, and there's certainly a lot of municipalities that weren't selected, like Port Alberni or Vernon or Penticton. So there is some reason that we were picked. I guess we will have to wait and find out, it seems, at this point. So where are we now? In terms of the municipality, I'll just mention quickly, I had a look at the OCP and the population projections, and like we do seem to sort of be below that, so I think like we do have some room for growth if we're looking at the OCP. I mean, in 1995, they thought we'd be over 6,000 people by 2006, and we're not, so I guess that gives us some room for growth. And what else? So currently we allow secondary suites, but only up to 90 square meters for attached, and for detached only 70 square meters, and that's only on lots over 1.98 square meters. And we don't have any exemptions for ALR land, which of course the ALC does have different rules that are available for that. So the concerns that we're looking at in Metchosin that I hear the most about are we don't have a public sewage system. Not all of Metchosin is on public water, and the access to public transportation is a bit more limited, and the worry about increased traffic, of course. So what kind of ideas have we come up with? So there's ones that are purpose-driven. So one of the most popular is seniors housing. I do really like this one. It's the idea that we can allow a lot of seniors who may not be able to live in their homes anymore to age in the community, I think is just great. There's a lot of opportunity with that in terms of grants, but we do need land. There is a group right now who would like to look at getting 4460 Happy Valley for this purpose, and it would also be a great site for a community garden. Maybe a hospice, and of course workforce, losing my thoughts here, process here. Workforce building. So Colin Doyland did that wonderful presentation on October 16th, and I think that's a great idea to build when we build the new fire hall. Wonderful. So then we also have bylaw amendments. So that would of course include my personal favorite, of course, the tiny home RV pad rental, and I did a presentation on that last year. I did add an appendix on that just because I have noticed that there are an increasing amount of municipalities. So that's just included on the appendix, the ones that I found very quickly that have started making bylaw amendments regarding tiny homes and RV living. Like actually Nanaimo, Souk has created like a guideline. I don't think they've actually amended their bylaw, but they have done that, and some of the islands, like Main Island, have done it. So it's pretty cool where it's going with that. Yeah. So restricting Airbnbs is kind of being done for us. Changing the max square footage from 70 to 90 for detached. I'm in favor of this one because it would help with a lot of people who have growing families on their home. And that may be done for us, we don't know. Carriage houses and two-story suites kind of takes up less land. Grandfathering in non-conforming suites as an emergency act, I think, would be an interesting one because it would allow us to inspect suites that already exist, and it would prevent the evictions of people who are living in these places. Because, I mean, we're not going to tear them down necessarily, or it would cost a lot to do that. And allowing detached on parcels under 2 acres, looks like that's happening. Allowing subdivision for a relative is something I hear a lot. And amending the bylaw for ALR to match ALC rules, I know this has been brought up for other reasons, but I think amending the whole package so that it matches the ALR would be really, really nice, especially for farmers to be able to have more room to accommodate people, workers. So I'm going to try to go quickly because I know I'm not going to take up too much more of your time here. So rezoning, or no, that's still the same. What happened there? Oh yes, that was rezoning. So that was just the idea that, rezoning areas for different purposes like tiny homes, maybe co-op housing. Colin did a presentation on something like that. Maybe reviewing build-out capacity in some areas and selecting for density on the chance that we have to do that for some reason, but hopefully not, right? Okay, programs, there's border matching programs that are available for people who maybe want to have someone in their home. There's the Young Agrarians, of course, which is very popular. Why is this important? So safety, making sure that these buildings can be inspected. Families being able to help their own families, I think, is just a really important thing. I think it's hard for people to not be able to do that. So then they have grandkids and things. So multi-generational living is becoming more popular. It's revenue for the district to be able to get permits for all of these places and charge people to inspect them. It's revenue for homeowners, if they have an RV pad or they can have this extra rental income, and legitimizes members of our communities who rent and keeps workers with us, and we can control what housing looks like in our area. So just to close, I think what we're really asking here that in regards to the province, I'd really love to ask you guys to act on this, to negotiate on behalf of the people in Metchosin. So while we have been early as a municipality to allow secondary suites, that was 20 years ago, and it looks like that's just mandatory now. So as for the 3 and 4 unit dwellings, that may happen to us as well. So it seems that while we may not really have the infrastructure to support it, the province seems willing to build it. And I've heard them say that at the convention. So keep in mind that while it isn't cheap for them to pipe water or expand sewer, we are right next to Langford and Colwood. So it's not impossible for them to do that. So with that, I hope that council can look at this as a negotiation and find ways to increase our supply without opening us up to developers and without compromising Metchosin's rural character. Sorry for talking so fast. I really want to keep it under 10 minutes for you guys because I struggle with that and I write too much stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Because this is a presentation, Sarah, the committee has the ability to ask you questions. Is there anything for Sarah? Miss Anthony, and Councillor Johns, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. There's a lot of information packed into your presentation and a good expansion of what you did last time as well. I have a lot of questions, but I'm just going to zero in on one, and that is the revenue for the district. You did cite the permits and what was the other one? Inspections. Do you know how much that is?
You can tell them how much that is. That's up to you guys to decide, right? I mean, I think that's what Langford sort of did. I mean, not that we all love what Langford, but that was a choice too, is they said, we're going to charge a whole bunch. And yeah, you can have this, but we are going to make you pay for it. So that's kind of up to you guys what you want to charge to make it worthwhile to compensate for some of the things that we may have to pay for.
Yeah, so currently, I'm not sure what it is. It's not a lot right now, but that's a one-time fee. So I guess my second part of that question is people who own homes, the taxpayers of this community who are actually taxed and that money goes into the public coffers, they get assessed on their buildings that are being built. And we know that there are a lot of homes or alternative homes that aren't assessed by the assessment authority in that regard. So as much as we are asked last year and again this year for lots of different services, my concern would be how to how much money are we actually getting to offset the cost, I guess is sort of what it is. Because
my suggestion with the tiny homes would be do a yearly inspection, because there's a lot of problems that you have to watch for in terms of piping and sewage. Why not, right?
And then there's a cost to having somebody monitor that as well. So there's another position, another wage. That's quite a bit annually, right? That's their pension plan, that's their holidays, that's their wage for the year, which on average is $7,000 to $9,000. You know, I don't know how many percents of tax money that is. So again, we have to be mindful of the money that's being sent, what's coming in, as well as, and this is probably on everyone's minds, that more people that are living here is tapping into our services. You know, so the big ticket items is our emergency services and our public works, right? So we have very, very small contingent of staff, but we have very high amount of tax dollars that goes into those two departments. And people, you know, we need to have those services.
Certainly, but if you end up with an onslaught of 3plexes and 4plexes that you can't control, it's going to be much higher. And we're going to have the secondary suites probably whether we like it or not. So it would be my concern.
And so then you'll agree that we do have that issue already with dwellings that are under the radar, that we're paying for those services, but we're not collecting.
I do, but I also think humans are more important.
Okay.
That's the difference, I think. It is a cost, but it's a cost that's going to happen regardless.
Okay.
I would
That's all I
say.
have to say.
Okay. Committee, any further questions for Ms. Anthony? Councillor Gray?
Thank you, Councillor Shugan. Not one so much for our guest, thank you, but I'm wondering, we were going to have a discussion at planning committee about housing. Is there a date set for that? Because I think a lot of the material here is worthy of a bigger discussion of council itself.
I am struggling to see where that came from. You've mentioned it before, but I don't really recall exactly what the nature of your comment was, or what you're recalling. And I could be wrong, I could be missing something.
Oh, sure. I don't mind digging it up for you. We talked at the table here about the housing issue and the notion, I think it was when we were responding to a letter, or perhaps, what was the discussion? But anyway, we talked about the idea that having a meeting to talk about the housing situation, so that we could form a position and talk in a unified way with our community about it, and possibly with the government. If my memory doesn't serve me right.
And it may not be serving me right either.
Gosh.
And the one thing, and I mean, if there was a motion on that, we should follow through, absolutely. If it was just discussed, I don't recall it right now. But the one thing, sorry, I'll let you finish, Councillor Gray, after you. I just had a comment or two. But before that, Ms. Anthony, are there any more questions for Ms. Anthony? Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for the questions. And if you ever have any more, I am around.
Great. The one thing that I believe we should, well, is the reality for us right now is the new legislation is going to be upon us in the new year. I think June 30th is when it takes place. So we will be grappling with that, and I think one of the things that this council is working to do is get clarity on what the legislation means and then what the forthcoming regulations are going to be. Now, what I believe is the case right now, again, subject to further clarity, is that we are likely to be exempt from the provisions that require small-scale multiple units, and that's mainly based on the fact that the legislation says you have to be connected to water or sewer. And then there's also provisions around land size as well. So that is in Bill 44. It's how to look at section 481.4. So again, we'll be getting clarity on that, but that's the way it looks right at this moment. We will be, as Ms. Anthony was saying, it looks like we're going to be very subject to the secondary suite regulations. What is likely to happen is the legislation will come out, it will identify who is subject to that, but then the regulations will identify things like setbacks and maximum lot size, etc. So that's something to be seen, and it'll be interesting to see whether our current zoning bylaw provisions are consistent with what the provincial government says. So there's a lot more to come. I should say we are doing things on the housing front. We're going to be getting a staff report on short-term rentals. My goal would be to act on that fairly quickly. It is the local government that seems to be the enforcing agent. The province has a role, but it's up to the local government to do the enforcement. We are assessing housing needs and housing opportunities at the fire hall as well. So there's two things that we're looking at. So, okay, moving on in the agenda. Thanks very much. We are now at public participation.
Patty Whitehouse, Rocky Point Road. I just want to caution council about one thing. Very often in these discussions, and very understandably, the notion is brought up that we want to make opportunities, for example, for our seniors to stay in the community. We want to be able to do subdivision for relatives so we can help families. We want to be able to provide secondary housing so we can help families. There is no legislation that allows us to enforce that. So, and other municipalities, probably here too, but certainly other municipalities have had the experience of, for example, allowing somebody to subdivide for relative, and then they turn around and sell the lot to somebody they've never even met before. As far as seniors, having a place for seniors is concerned, if there's any subsidy at all to the cost for the residents for staying there, you cannot specify where they come from. So the only way you could make Metchosin seniors housing for seniors is if it was very expensive and those seniors paid the whole shot. I don't think that's what we're looking for. So while I am fully aware of the value of people staying in their own communities as the age of having families support generations of their families and having generations growing up together, there is no way as a municipality we can make sure that happens. So don't fall into the trap, please, of looking at housing options with that as a goal in mind.
Thank you, Matt. Public participation. And just a reminder, your name and your street, please.
Eric White, 4290 Matheson Road. Just in terms of some numbers, because that's a lot of what this breaks down to, even the oil thing. For the housing, for example, the tiny homes, if you charge, say, an annual $500 fee for say we end up with 100 tiny homes, that's $50,000 a year. So basically that would offset the cost of someone to enforce that. Say we end up with 200, that's $100,000 a year. That's probably a good staff member plus some. So if you're wondering about the numbers, well, you can make it add up to whatever you want and make it revenue positive for our community. As far as, are you going to collect extra tax dollars on it? Definitely. A tiny home pad is going to be seen by BC assessments as a value added to your property, right? When you go to sell, it's going to be viewed as a stream of revenue. It's only going to add value to people's properties and increase our tax revenue in return. So to say that the people living won't be paying their fair share, well, someone's going to pay for it, and it'll be broken down through assessments or through levies, whatever our community needs to do to make it positive for us. And for this too big oil thing, it's also a matter of numbers. I completely agree with Councillor Shukin. I wouldn't call it so much hypocrisy. It's the fact, unlike big tobacco, where you can quit tobacco, you can put it down, you can walk away. All of us are strangled by the grip of big oil. Every day we all put gas in our cars, or the majority of us do. And what's going to happen is if we sue big oil, they're going to say, well, I'm not paying for this. There goes 2 or 3 cents, $1 per liter. Everything's going to go up. They're going to pass it down to us. So until we can relieve our burden on them, we're basically just spanking ourselves if we sue them. We have to get away from them. We have to. It's a necessity, but unfortunately, attacking them is just an attack on us in our current state of society. And so it's the right track to say, like, we shouldn't sue them until we have a way to actually relieve ourselves of their strangle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Public participation. Anyone else?
I'm arm wrestling Jane over next. Thank you, Sarah Anthony, for your presentation. I've spoken here previously before.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry,
Name,
Ellen
street.
Frisch, Perry Cross Road.
Excellent.
I'm a regulatory permitting planner by trade. I do that throughout southern British Columbia, including on Vancouver Island. And I've had the opportunity to participate in some of the discussions with the housing group and view the presentation in advance and have a lot of discussions around this concept of RVs and tiny homes as options. And this is one area that does need some review by council. And the reason it's being reviewed by so many other councils is because it is such a can of worms, because the BC Building Code specifically exempts structures that fall under CSA Z240. Tiny homes, as they're called, are actually manufactured homes, must be manufactured either in a facility or to that CSA standard. Therefore, the BC Building Code doesn't apply. Therefore, municipalities' building codes themselves, their building bylaws, don't apply, except when those structures are fixed to the ground or when there's civil works associated with those structures. So when we talk about permitting, there's very little permitting that can occur except with respect to the civil components of it. And what we're seeing or hearing in terms of the expectations of the use of those structures, it's plug and play. We're going to plug into the electrical grid at the house, or we're going to put the septic tank waste into the septic tank of the house, or we might build a separate structure, or we might have a composting toilet. There are only two of those options that are legal. One is the use of a composting toilet. The other is a VHA certified septic system. And we don't see a lot of VHA certified septic systems being constructed for RVs on people's properties or for their tiny homes. What we do see is people in the past 10 years having constructed what they think or call tiny homes on trailer structures in their backyards and then selling them to people as tiny homes, which are not roadworthy and can't be licensed under this CSA Z240 classification. So where we start getting into trouble is when the fire inspector has to go inspect a structure, there's no legal structure to inspect because the tiny home doesn't fit it. When you're looking at fire protection, in particular, there isn't the same level of requirement. So therefore, municipalities have no authority over it at all because it's this separate CSA standard that has to apply. So what we're seeing is municipalities that are just rethinking the whole thing. You know, if we did want to look at all these things, what would that puzzle look like? And I think that's the conversation that Metchosin needs to have. Because it would not be caught by property taxes because the BC Assessment Authority looks at structures as they're defined under the BC Assessment Act. And anything that is not affixed to the ground or is not deemed a structure under the BC Building Code, ergo the Metchosin building bylaw, is not a taxable asset to the municipality or the province. So there are some potential solutions, but it is, like I said, a puzzle that needs to be really understood well before heading down those paths. So that's it. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jane Hammond, 5447 Rocky Point Road. First of all, I'd like to commend Sarah for her presentation. I thought she's given you a really terrific overview of many, many different ways that this topic can be looked at. And I also appreciate Councillor Gray's sort of bringing up the potential topic of addressing housing as a council, as well as involving the community. Trying to remember the letter back to Ravi Kalan, and I believe one of the statements at the end was that Metchosin is looking forward to working with the provincial government on this. So I'd like to sort of hear what that might mean in this context too. And the only other thing is the housing targets that we keep mentioning. Does anybody have an idea of what percentage that might look like? Have other communities been given a certain percentage? Are we looking at, 5%? That would be a lot, a very small number. 10% of 5,000. So let's try to keep that in perspective. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Anyone else for public participation? Okay, going once, twice, 3 times. Thank you very much. Okay, committee, thanks. Let's keep moving here. So we have 2 minutes to adopt here. The community planning meeting of October 16th and the special planning committee meeting of November 7th. Any comments on the October 16th minutes? You have seen these before, I believe. Could I have a motion to adopt? Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Mayor Little. Any comments? All in favor? Thank you very much. Councillor Graham, any? Okay, okay, thank you very much. Yeah. The special planning committee meeting of November 7th. Any comments on this? This is on page 15. This was where we talked about the buffer land recommendations.
It's really adoption.
Thank you very much, Councillor Epp, and seconded by Councillor Donaldson. And discussion, all in favor? Thank you very much. That's passed. Receipt of the minutes. This is I believe it's the final meeting that the Bufferland Working Group had of October 11th. Any comments on this? Can I have a motion to receive? Councillor Donaldson and Mayor Little, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, so now we have the beginning of 3 reports here. The first is the development variance permit for 1050 Matheson Lake Road, and as you recall, at the last council meeting, I believe it was, we waived the requirement that the applicant had to wait 6 months before reapplying again. They have done this right now. What has come back to us is there is only one item that requires a variance, and that is the setback from the principal dwelling. The size of the dwelling is within the allowed provisions of our detached secondary suite regulation. So now what we're looking at is a setback of 38.45 meters. That is more than double what the actual requirement is. And the applicants have provided their rationale. They believe that that setback protects trees on the site, allows for easy driveway access, minimal excavation, and the economics of servicing the site are more favorable. And they also point out that this allows for the separation of privacy from the main dwelling. So, council or committee, what has been our practice is to initiate a mail-out to advise the neighbors within 60 meters of the variance application, but also schedule a site visit. And I'm going to look at, and that would be option 1 with the addition of a site visit, but there it is for you right now. Any comments on this? Councillor Dawes.
Yes, thank you very much. So The planner has given a comment here that I want to address, and that is that the distance separating a detached secondary suite from the principal dwelling located on the same lot shall not be more than 15 meters. And this came out of the original discussions of the ad hoc group of residents talking about attached and detached suites. And the purpose of why it is 15 meters is to be closest to the house. There's a number of different reasons. One of those was the principal residence could be responsible for the comings and going of the tenants. The other concern at the time was that further away from the principal dwelling, there was a concern from citizens in this community that could be a potential for future subdivision. So those were just a couple of things. There were many more. I wasn't on that committee. I do know people that were. I am always cautious of going too far away from these bylaws because we create them for a reason, and there's a lot of deliberation with that. What I do like about this new council is we're doing a site visit, and every property is a little bit different, hence the idea of having variances. So I would support doing a site visit on this. And acknowledging that this is 126 feet away from the principal dwelling. So it's always good to see what those things are. And the last one we looked at that was like this was 150 feet that could be seen from the house. But again, there were other factors on that I personally did not support. So I'd really like to see this too. It's always of great value to be on site to see what we're actually talking about.
I would agree. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Before I ask if there are any comments from the committee, I've kind of blown sort of process a little bit. Is the applicant here, and do they wish to address the development variance permit application? Okay, that's fine. Committee, so Councillor Donaldson is advocating, I think, for option 1, which does not include the site visit, but we can build that in. And any other comments? Mary Lou?
Yeah, we've heard a lot about this property. I'm anxious to take a look at the site visit and see if the rationale is so as stated, and then we can deliberate after that. So I would also be in favor of the motion of option 1 plus the addition of the site visit.
Okay, sounds good. Councillor Donaldson, did you want to make a motion? We don't have a motion officially on the table yet, but
sure, if everybody's finished speaking.
Sounds good.
So I move to request that staff send notices to the landowners within 60 meters of the property, informing them of the application and the council meeting when issuance of the permit will be considered, and that council that staff schedule a site visit for council with the property owners.
Wonderful. Do we have a second? Marilyn? Any discussion? Councillor Gray?
Yeah, through the chair, if I could ask Mayor Little, I haven't heard a lot about this. Has there been other discussions? We had it on the agenda and removed it, and then we had it tonight.
Yeah, there was an application earlier in the year. The interim CEO can verify that, and the application was rejected at the last council or at the last community planning. I think meeting we had discussed it again and given them a waiver in terms of the 6 months. Time and they can apply for the application. So that's what I was coming to. Sorry, you don't remember that.
Okay. Any councillor?
Yeah, I certainly agree with this site visit because that's a huge departure from 15 meters. So, I think I really have to prove that there's some really good reasons for wanting it that far because it's that's a lot of distance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there are no further comments, I will call the question. All in favor of the motion? Okay, that's carried. All in favor? Great, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm not forgetting we'll move on to the next item here, the rezoning application for 4499 Leefield Road. The applicants are here, and I would like them to be able to address their the rezoning application that they put forward. So, quick summary. This is currently a 4-acre property, split zone upland, so a 4-hectare minimum, 10 acres roughly, and rural in the zoning bylaw. However, within the official community plan, it is fully indicated as upland, and it's contiguous with a number of upland zone properties, I believe to the northwest and south, or east, I believe. Yeah, it's one side does have another range, but it's typically within the upland configuration. So the proposal is for the following. So there would be a twofold rezoning that would occur. So one lot would be zoned rural, so that would have a minimum 2-acre subdivision. And I'd ask if council wants to have a look at page 55, because you can see the map as it's conceived by the applicants, and you can maybe see better what I'm talking about here. Page 55. So one lot would be rural, and then one lot would be rural residential that has a 0.8-acre subdivision. Okay, so within the information package, we have the planner's report, correspondence from the applicants, and also an environmental report as well. So just reading into the material or reading the material, it seems like the desire is to build lots consistent with those on Leefield, but also respecting the natural terrain. And if you can jump back now to page 40, our planner has laid out some options, and I have some thoughts on next steps, but it'd be great to hear from the applicants and following that discussion from the committee. So at this point, I would welcome Joanne and Dan Cote.
Hi there. You've got our address, 4499 Leefield Road. So we lived here in Metchosin for 38 years on our little 10-acre property. We did always intend to build a retirement home on it. And now that we've married off our 4 kids, we're looking at doing that. I do apologize for some of the variations in the reports there. Our original proposal was based on 4 properties beside us that all are approximately 5-acre divisions. And so that was the first picture there in the environmental report. Ms. Matheson, the planner, took a look at it with the engineer and said, you know, that's really far off from what our plan, the official community plan is. We said, okay, so she sent it back to us and we talked to our surveyor, and then that's where the 2-hectare rural and 2.6 hectare rural portion, and the 1.2 hectare are our one division came in. And that was followed by a phone conversation with Miss Catherine, and she said, you know, why did you pick our R2? We said, well, or our R1. We said, well, it fits. And she said, well, I believe that our R2 would be a better, because it's the point, or the 1 point, or it's a minimum of a 0.8 hectare, and it will be a 1.2 hectare lot. So anyhow, that explains some of the different little pictures that you have. So that's what our current proposal is. And yeah, the idea being is that we would just like to build a little house in the woods. And our daughter, son-in-law, and our new little 8-week-old grandson would take over the smaller portion of the property, the RR2 section. And we would retire onto the back half. So my husband Dan is really good with directions, so he has I go right and left, he does north, south, east, and west. So anyhow.
I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on the north, south, east, and west. It just tends to confuse some folks. But we are bordered on our east side by 4 properties that were split just before Metchosin became a municipality, I believe. We moved down here in '86. We hoped and were informed at the time that this would possibly be an option for us. This is what helped us buy this property. But it turned out that you can't divide 10 into 2 5s when you take an acre or more out to make a panhandle. So that one was dead in the water for us. We have discussed the detached secondary suite, the attached secondary suite, any sort of secondary suite, but that's a rental situation. And some people just aren't built to be landlords. I think we might be two of them. Also, we've produced 4 children. We're happy enough to have them all married off, 3 of them around the Southern Island. They would like to own something in their lifetime. A detached secondary suite is not an owner situation. They would like to do the same as us, and they would like to buy a property. But unfortunately, that's becoming increasingly difficult. In this case, we felt we could subdivide this property and supply 1 property to our family. We have 4 options there, but 1 property to our family. I understand the reselling pitfalls and that sort of thing, but in this case, we're going to be on the back for the rest of our lives with only a little bit of luck. The 2 questions that I asked myself when we started running into obstructions with this, we thought this was going to be a rubber stamp, was if you had to find properties for subdivision, would it be in the farmers' fields or would it be in the hills somewhere where it was fully treed and it would take 2,000 square feet out of a green space that's 10 acres? That would be my first question. My second question would be, if all the easy properties were gone and you were looking for a property to subdivide, what does this one not have that you would be looking for? We feel it's got enough size. We feel it's got enough location. It's on the end of a dead-end street. I think if this was built and you didn't know it was going to be built, 5 years from now you wouldn't know it was built. It's going to be in the middle of a forested area. We want to live in the forest for the rest of our days in Metchosin. That's what we're hoping you will consider before this, and we were hoping that we would get you folks, or many of your folks at least, out to our place to look at this, because we know this is a case-by-case situation, and you can see the lay of the land and how it fits and how it doesn't really fit for a detached secondary suite. Okay, thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any questions, or should we just sit back?
Should we stay?
Well, if you have questions, go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for some background information and your wishes as well. I am familiar with the 6 properties just before you. I've been on one driveway that is shared.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
I've walked it many times as well as driven it, because I know somebody that lives at the very top. And so, yes, I'm familiar with the forested area in there, and this is an interesting discovery from our planner and yourselves of what you're suggesting here. One of the things that I noticed here on page 55 is there's a well on site.
Yes.
Okay.
And how is your experience with your well? I know some of the other neighbors there, what their experiences are. Is everything, lots of water?
Well, everyone in that end of the road has a different water situation.
Has a deep well.
But I mean, some of them are artesian, some of them go down 600 feet. Ours happens to be
13 feet.
13 feet deep.
And it's just the one? Right
Just
now
the one
that's
right
there?
now. So we would be having to drill a well.
And it's at the very front of the property,
Yeah.
within a
Right.
a few steps of Leefield Road.
Yeah.
Okay. Good, thanks.
Good question. Committee, any further questions for the applicants? Councillor Webb?
Well, yeah, I found it really confusing that it says zoned upland and rural at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes,
You,
we
you
were
and us
confused.
both. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I don't know if anybody can explain how that would happen.
It was like that when we bought it 38 years ago.
Yes.
So to have a 10-acre parcel with an imaginary line halfway down the middle, where one half says this has to be 10 acres, and the other half says it can be 5 acres, is odd, to say the least.
I was going to make a motion of that, now I've lost the page.
Page 40?
40.
Before you do that, Councillor, it'd be great to just hear a little bit more from the committee. Unless you want to go on the motion, but
Yeah, I'd like to move option B, that is, do not require the applicant host a public information meeting, direct staff to refer the application to agencies for comment, and request staff to bring back the proposal and applicable land use bylaw amendment for consideration.
so committee, we have a motion on the floor. Is there anyone to second for discussion?
I'll second it for discussion.
Councillor Gray seconds, so, and Mr. and Mrs. Cote, you can.
I was wondering, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor, do you want to speak to your motion?
I don't know, like I said, I think, it's worth looking into. I think the idea that it was zoned in 2 different categories seems really strange. So, I think if we get some more information from staff on it through this motion, and then we can go and see what you have to say, and then go have a look at it.
Great. Councillor Gray. Any comments?
Well, I'm struck looking at the same question that Councillor Epp has got in terms of the unusual zoning, the split zoning that we see. When I look at but I'm concerned about just the issue of, our council policy would be that we're not increasing density. Particularly, we're not, this is increasing density. Our OCP doesn't call for that. We have a council policy opposed to that. So I'm not feeling very good about that. And I read through the proponent's paper on page 47, and I see there right at the top, the first paragraph, I think, well, this looks like a fairness question. And it says here that the 4 adjacent properties in the east have been rezoned. So I was kind of interested in learning about the rationale, how those other properties get rezoned and what happened when they were rezoned and what's been written down about that. So I'm curious about that. I guess I'm not really speaking to the motion right now. I'm just giving my thoughts about where we're at here. When I read the rest of the page, I see a couple of issues. One is, family, a place for family to join the parents, kids to join parents, and also that we need more housing in Metchosin, and that seems to be a big point. But to make a decision on the housing question, in terms of housing families and increasing more housing, to me, requires us that we actually have a meeting as council to talk about housing, so that we learn about what our ideas are and where we're going and what we might think. And from the public participation point of view, Jane Hammond mentioned our letter to Ravi Kalam. What are we planning on doing? What are we going to actually talk to the minister about? So I have those questions that are sort of in front of me before I'm looking at the motion itself. And that, for me, raises questions, making an approval or moving forward with this motion when we haven't got a housing discussion going. We don't have a housing policy written except what exists on our OCP at the moment. So that's where I'm at, but I'd like to hear from others to know what they're thinking.
Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, so I'll be supporting Councillor Epp's motion specifically because it does say request staff to bring back the proposal and the applicable land use bylaw amendment for consideration. So more information is definitely valued, I believe, in this situation.
Go ahead. I've got a comment for you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm inclined to support the motion as well. I'm just wondering why you opted for not hosting a public information. I was wondering if that, I mean, it is a requirement unless we waive it. I was just wondering the merits of that versus the opposite to that. I would be in favor of a public information meeting as well if there was merit to it, if it was going to provide value. I'm not in favor of holding this up, this application up until we have the housing question settled, because that's going to become over the next year or two that's going to be a organic process over that time. And I think it would be unfair to hold this up. So I will be voting in favor of the motion, but I just wanted to ask through the chair, Councillor Eck, was there a reason that you thought that the public meeting wasn't necessary?
I just thought of getting the information first, and it just seemed like it's a big project for staff and everything to have a public information session and the time and everything. So that's basically, it was more the inconvenience of it. If we can get the information through B, then maybe it'll all become crystal clear.
Okay, thank you. And then the next, after we vote on this, I'd like to make a motion for a site visit as well. I think it'd be really informative for us all to see it as well. And then also, we have talked about housing for 20 or so years. I mean, that's why we legalized secondary suites, was to provide accommodation and that in essence increased the density of Metchosin. So it is within the ethos of what is in our OCP regarding density and making room for family.
Thank you, Martha. So, Ms. Tarnowski, I have a question or comment. I feel like some important input to put in here, but go ahead.
I was just going to clarify that if council chooses option A, it is the applicant's responsibility to host the information session, not the district.
Thank you. Excellent point, Ms. Tarnowski. My own view is I don't support the motion because it does require work by staff. It basically kicks off the process. Personally, I feel I'm not there at a point yet where I can kick this off. So, for example, having staff refer the application to agencies for comment and request all the land use bylaw amendments for consideration. That's actually going to involve a fair bit of work. What we do have, though, is option C, which is simply request further information from staff or the applicant. One of the things that I think would be good to do is do a site visit. And I would actually suggest and the other thing too is we can make an information request to staff. Say, for example, more information on the nature of the rezoning that happened for those properties, I believe, to the east. So, and there may be some other information that we get following the site visit. So I don't support the motion, but I think we can actually achieve much of maybe what the intent was with option C and just getting more information back. The one thing I have to say is I have some misgivings about this, I'll be honest. This is a spot zone. And there seems to be some compelling rationale to consider it given the split zone and given what the other properties are along the road there. There is a consistency question, but as you look at it too, there's also the upland zoning surrounding that area. So that there's a bit of a push and pull there for me personally. I think it'd be good to I think it'd be nice to go and see the property if we can, get more information from staff as applicable, and take our bearings after that. So sorry, Ms. Tarnowski, go ahead.
So just to add a bit of context to the properties that have been rezoned, those were all done under the CRD days. Those are before Metchosin became incorporated. So just for background information.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Gray.
I'll speak in opposition to the motion. I think that I'm not prepared to have the staff do the work when we're intending to violate the OCP and violate council policy on density. There's no public opportunity for the public open house. I think while I'm pretty big on involving the public all the way. I know the council, when I haven't been at the table, has decided not to have open houses, but I support those, and I think it would be fundamental in this kind of situation, specifically with the spot zoning. And then I'll just repeat that I think we need a discussion about housing, generally speaking. I hear the mayor saying it's been discussed for 20 years, but those were previous councils. And what they did is they established the OCP, and if you want to follow what the discussions that they had for 20 years, then we stick to the OCP. So I'm kind of curious about that. I would prefer that we take time, and I think what you've suggested, Councillor Schuken, is a more reasonable approach under the circumstance. I'm particularly concerned about setting ourselves up for more requests to do zoning and spot zoning, and I don't know what the defense here would be except a fairness, and we've just heard the zoning of the other properties was done before the district was established. So it's really a question about housing, and I'm not at the moment familiar with the housing needs assessment. I'd like to be briefed on that a little bit so I know what we're doing. And we had an earlier presentation, which I'd like to honor this evening, where we saw a list of options, which were all kind of interesting to look at. I'm not speaking in support of all those different options, but saying, look, why don't we talk about where we're at and where we might go? And certainly there's a context to where the province is right now, but we're our own community and we're going to be making decisions ourselves within a framework, and I'd like to have that discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. So we do have a motion on the table. It has been seconded, and any further comments, and I will call the question. So all in favor of option B, which is to not require the applicant to host a public meeting, then direct staff to refer the application to agencies for comment, request staff bring back the proposal and the applicable land use bylaw amendment for consideration. So Mayor Little, was that a hand for a question, or you're in favor?
No, in favor, sorry.
Okay, so all in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, option B passes.
Councillor Schuken, would you entertain a motion on a discussion about housing at this point?
I
recall.
Okay, well, go ahead. You made the motion, sir. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Committee discuss our approach to housing at its next meeting with a staff report, with an update on our existing housing needs targets, the number of houses there will be if we build out to our current zoning, and the number of secondary suites. So just so you have the basic data, and if there could possibly done an estimate of illegal dwellings. And if it's second to the motion, I'd speak to it.
Is there a seconder? Going once, going twice. Okay, that motion is just does not go anywhere. The one thing I would suggest, though, is that there is so much potential change. There is change coming, even if the certain provisions of the new legislation don't apply to Metchosin. There are significant portions that do. So I think a discussion on housing and what it means to the community is something we should look at, but only within the context of once we understand what the legislation and regulations are, and that is going to be in the coming year. In terms of opening up new housing opportunities, that is bound to be coming in by mid next year, when at least the short-term rental legislation is passed. So change is afoot, but thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, I don't disagree with having discussion on housing, but I didn't support the motion because, as Councillor Schuken suggested, there's a lot of changes coming until we get, we've been going back and forth with emails and everything and getting opinions about what the province is doing, but until we know for sure exactly what the province is going to do and how it relates to Metchosin, I don't see how we can have a fulsome discussion on housing.
options. I guess my interest is simply to take a letter we wrote to the minister and follow through and have a discussion and then engage with the province. I've worked, as people know, for almost 2 decades in government of the policy and legislation, policy planning and legislation, the Ministry of Health. And guess what? When you're working on legislation, just like Minister Callan invited us to respond and speak to him in the meantime, so that as they're working on it, they get a feel of what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And I think not engaging, not sort of getting our act together, figuring out where we stand on some of these questions so we might inform the government. The legislation will come without our input, and I don't think that makes good sense. And I don't think we're representing our community properly in what I think was been said, was it said earlier tonight, the last time we met, an existential question for Metchosin. And so I'm disappointed the council wouldn't be interested in sorting itself out so it can engage.
Very little.
Yeah, in order for us to do our due diligence, I'd like to propose a motion that we do a site visit, accept the Cote's invitation to come and view the site.
Thank you. We have a motion on the table, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Comments? I will just say thank you very much, very little, for remembering that. So, further comments? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Any more discussion on the matter here? 449 Leefield Road. Okay. If not, we will move on. So we're next talking about the Weir Beach stairs. I'm going to turn matters over here to our interim CAO, Ms. Tarnowski, in a moment. But just some background. The Weir Beach stairs were closed in October 2022, just prior, one of the last acts of the last council, and done so for safety reasons. And there's good reason for that. The stairs are steep. The footings on the stairs are beginning to wear away. The railings beginning to wear away. There's rebar sticking up. So there are significant safety issues there. There was a request to look at a remediation plan for the stairs, if that was possible. And a report was done in, was it February? I believe it was February of this year. And from that, there was an effort made by the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee to go out and visit the Weir Beach stairs, to talk with some of the neighbors and begin considering possible options for repair. Now, from that, there was a report that came back to this committee, and what we did after that is we approved a budget of $15,000 to move ahead with repairs that were roughly in the nature of the way the stairs were, so a natural, more rustic approach, as opposed to a metal staircase that was highly engineered and used materials like metal, say. And so that was passed by this committee and then by council in June. And to date, there's not been work done on this. I was able to do a site visit with our engineer and with Mark Atherton, the chair of PTASC, just a few weeks ago. I think it was November 7th, and we did talk about more issues. There were some complexities that were raised by our municipal engineer, Mr. Healey. And with that, if I could, I will now turn it over to Ms. Tarnowski to talk about some of the issues that this committee maybe needs to more carefully consider. Thank you.
So while you're deliberating options that's available for the Weir Beach stairs, let's speak to the biggest thing is the risk mitigation. So the option that's being proposed under option 1, which is the prefabricated manufactured stairs, it will be engineered, it will be signed off. So in terms of mitigating liability, that's the best way for the district to transfer the liability, saying we know that these sets of stairs are engineered to specifications. So in terms of liability, that is the least risky for the district. However, I also realize that comes a cost of an estimate of $50,000 I would suggest that in today's construction reality, that probably will be more than $50,000. So that's the con to option number one. However, the pro is that you will mitigate most of the risk, because knowing that those are certified design stairs. So while we move on to option two, is that the cost is considerably less, so it's about a third of option one. However, this is where the committee and eventually council has to accept the fact that these stairs will not be designed or stamped by any engineer or any professional like that. It's just a set of stairs that's going to be designed and built for the purpose of just the path of travel to the beach. So there are some ways that the municipality can choose to mitigate the risk. However, I would caution that the committee and council choose this option, knowing that if something happens, that we cannot fall back on the fact that these stairs were engineered and designed. So that really is the option two. And although it's not presented here on the report, it was discussed back in October 2022 that closing the trail was an option presented at that time. So it's not like he is just talking about the cost of the stairs. So another area that the committee will have to consider is I'll call it ad hoc parking. It's not really proper parking at top of the stairs or to the access to the beach. So.
Thank you. So, Ms. Tarnowski, I think one of the things you're saying to us is go with option one, go with option two, but understand liability. If we go with option one, which we have actually voted on, we possibly need to be prepared to accept more liability risk. Is that a way of phrasing it? Or?
No, it's actually the opposite.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry, we have voted to go with option two, and so there's more liability risk with that. Okay. Okay. So. Okay. One of the things we could ask staff for is some understanding in terms of what we can do to limit liability. So whether it's around signage is the big one. Parking is another one, and there's ways of mitigating that, or sorry, not mitigating that, but removing parking opportunities. Any thoughts further on that possibility, or some other options? And before I mention that, I feel like I want to apologize to the residents because this is probably something that this table should have considered in February, and there's been a number of months that have gone by, and there's unfortunately been no action. What is probably the reality, though, is we're not going to be able to do work in November, December, January, February. So there's some time now to consider what is the best approach for us. So, but committee, any thoughts? Councillor Dons?
So I sort of feel like I'm repeating myself from the last time we talked about this, and it's unfortunate it's taken so long to come back to us. We did approve $15,000 in the budget for this, and I do understand what we're saying here about the liability risk that is in this day and age is something to take very, very seriously. So if we were to go with option one, which is $35,000 more and growing by the day, it's unfortunate this didn't take place when it was less, but maybe it hasn't been that much difference. I see it as a valuable little trail. I'm just not sure, weighing out the cost, if this was like, if it's double, if it's $100,000, is it really worthwhile? As far as the parking, which I did speak to before, I honestly do not think there should be any parking up there. Most trailheads don't have parking lots. People create parking lots. And keeping in mind what the neighbors had said there, I totally sympathize with that. This is actually and I'm in opposition to what the report says, this is a lovely little connector trail. There's all sorts of ways to connect with other trails in that neighborhood. Can we live with it closed? Absolutely. When we have it open, it's a bonus. So you can go either way. I'm not helping the cause by what I'm saying. I'm just pointing out these different things. So I see it as a value, but we haven't talked about the community fund either as a source. So that is something else to consider. So I'm not sure if you're looking for a motion on this tonight, and I don't know if I can put one together. I'd like to hear what my colleagues have to say.
To me right now, I think it's getting a handle on that liability issue, and also maybe a reassessment of some of the technical challenges as well. Because this, when I talked to Mr. Healey on November 7th, the prefabricated metal stairs were not necessarily what was being considered at that point. There were some other options that maybe involved, some concrete, a bigger retaining wall further, like below, as you enter, approach the beach where the steep part is. And it was also pointed out that there may be some permitting issues with that as well. So, which we did hear in some of our early discussions with the property owners in the area. So
when you say permitting, is that anything to do with where the shoreline?
exactly. Okay. Yeah. So, Councillor Ryan?
I'm just wondering what makes this any different. Sorry, I have my mic on, but what makes this any different as far as risk goes compared to anywhere else in our Metchosin property, on our parks and trails, where some of the trails are steep, some of them are rocky. They're not certainly all safe. People could get injured quite easily on the trails. And so, I realize there's a risk for everything, but I don't know if there's something different about these stairs that would make it more of a risk, or not, because we seem to have accepted the risk in the other parks and trails that we have.
Well, I would say the one difference is that it's a pretty steep trail. Like, it's a steep and tricky trail, not only to traverse, but also to consider remediation works. So I don't know, other than the path that's beside my house, I don't know of a steeper trail actually. But
good point, Councillor F. There are some very steep trails with moving rocks. I traverse them every week with 4 feet underneath me. But having said that, I think the risk is the fact that this is a constructed trail, or not trail, stairs that we're talking about, and with that, it has to be engineered, as opposed to what's there right now, which is dirt and wood and rebar that, it's a little bit different. So it's about the engineering aspect, I believe. Just like when you're building a house, you have to have there's a building code and there's permitting and engineering code. Is that correct?
I believe so, but that's maybe something. So I would make a motion that we ask staff to provide us with further information on liability risks related to the stairs, but also, as we can, our other parks and trails. Related to our trails. And that we do, and within that context, do a reconsideration of the technical feasibility of option 1 or option 2. And again, we did approve option 2, but maybe we need to relook at that. So moved. Do I have a second?
No, sir.
Councillor Donaldson, thank you. Discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. Councillor Craig?
Yeah, I agree with the notion of sorting of the liability question. If that's what's stopping us from moving ahead on a plan that we already, or a decision we've already made. I could imagine, but maybe the motion is entertaining, it sounds like, the possibility of spending $50,000 plus on a trail there. which I'm strongly opposed to. I've heard that there's very little traffic on this trail. There's a few residents there that use it, and they don't want anybody else using it. And there's no parking, and the road's dangerous. It doesn't make sense to me to spend $50,000 on something like that when we heard earlier in the discussion this evening that people want to keep a tight handle on the purse and wouldn't invest it for other purposes. I just can't imagine spending that kind of money on this sort of situation. So that being in the motion, I'm going to vote against it. I'll just say the other part of it for me is that I thought $50,000 was a lot of money in the first place. And I'm getting more attracted to the idea of closing this trail or ripping out all of the structures that are there so that it's just like some other trails in Metchosin, and then the liability will be the same. If people want to use it, they can go up and down, you can put a sign there, use it at your own risk or whatever. I'm not convinced that there's a big point in spending a lot of money on this trail at the moment. Given all the discussion, and we have had a lot of discussion about this one, it turns out. I can think of a trail, for example, Mount Ash, which is quite steep. You practically have to be a mountain goat to climb up there. And then this one, we're saying we're going to spend all the money on it. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I don't think we're saying that as yet, but those are fair points, though. And I think one of the things about reassessing the feasibility of option 1 is just to understand how high that may be to make it viable, and is there a cost? Is there a public good in spending all that money where there are other needs elsewhere? So
I just have an idea of not putting our staff on it, spending all that effort to try it, that we're just going to say no anyway.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Go ahead.
Just for information, if the committee chooses to close the trail, so we do have a statutory right of way, so we do have the option to dispose of that statutory right of way.
So is it, Mr. Arnowski, it would be great, just to follow up on one of Councillor Gray's ideas, is if we removed all the stair structure, does that somehow reduce our liability if it is just a natural area and the trail goes where it is? That might be interesting to explore. So the one other thing I do want to note is that we've talking with some of the neighbors, they have pointed out a possible trespass in terms of the trail, so that also has to be addressed as well. So, but right now, we do have to get a handle on what we're prepared to spend and the liability question. So, Marilyn.
Yeah, it really depends what we want. If we wanted, and we already voted on this, a safe access point for local residents to access the beach, including the students at Pearson College. That's why we voted in favor of the $15,000 option. And I'm still in favor of that. It's still in the budget. It's a shame that we haven't moved on this. And so I would like to see some of the residents be involved. We've got an engineer that lives next door and who's volunteered his excavator, his expertise, and I would say removing the stairs would increase our liability. I mean, if you've taken the time to go there, that would be very dangerous to take the stairs out and then knowing that people would access the beach that way. I think that would increase our liability. So I'm still in favor of our decision that we made previously to provide a safe access point for the neighborhood people to access Weir Beach, because it is very unsafe road. It's unsafe for people to walk on the road around to Sandgate to access the road.
Yeah, well said. Okay. There's a motion on the floor which Ms. Miller has got in exact detail.
Oh, what is it? Could you repeat it, please?
I don't think I can. No, it's a motion. Please, thank you.
To recommend that council asks staff to provide further information on liability risk related to the stairs and related to our other trails, and within the context, reconsider reassessing the feasibility of options 1 and 2.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hunt.
With the technical feasibility.
Technical feasibility. Okay, thank you.
And others were involved in the engineering, spending engineering time and energy and money.
Okay, I will call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Okay, so Donaldson, Shukin, and Epp are in favor. Mary Little and Councillor Gray opposed. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on. And residents, thank you for your patience in this meeting. Oh, and we've come to the most exciting part of all, which is the councillor's update. So, okay. So, page 95. Thanks. Okay, a few things to just run through as succinctly as I can. I just wanted to, Parks and Trails Advisory Committee, there is some new members that will be seeking the new year, and it's because two of our long-serving members are not continuing with the committee, and that's Alan Dewar and Lee Johnston. I apologize, I did spell his name wrong, but Lee Johnston. Both have served, I think, Lee Johnson has served for at least 20 years, and Ellen has also served for a long time as well. Both contributing members, and I just want to pass on their thanks. I should let you know that Mark Atherton is considering not renewing his term. He's doing that, and we'll hear more from Mark in the coming years. So I do have a request, and I think this does need a motion, and I would move that the committee requests that staff prepare an advertisement for the Metchosin News, January and February editions, to seek interest among community members in joining the Parks and Trails Advisory Select Committee. Councillor Donaldson, and discussion.
I'll speak in favor of that, and just want to offer my thanks also to Ellen Dewar and Lee Johnson.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion? Thanks. If not, call the question. All in favor? Thanks, that's carried. Great, okay. Okay, so the PTASC meeting of November 21st. As usual, there was a lot that was discussed around this. A lot discussed at the Parks and Trails community, and you'll see my bottom paragraph. I wouldn't mind if we get into that just in a moment, after I review the highlights here. So we talked about the park bench and picnic table donation program. By February, we'll have that finalized, and thanks to our Trails coordinator, Ryan Carter, for coordinating that. The Welcome to Metchosin sign was discussed. Ron Aubrey, who has developed the sign and is long cared for it, is going to develop some standards for us to help staff the public works crew to understand how best to care for it over the long term. There was a request to add language about dogs and leash and under control in the trail brochure, and Mark Atherton has actually gotten back to the chair of the parks, actually two staff to ask for that change to be made about under control and where leashes are specifically required. There was discussion about repairs to a section of Metchosin Park Trail, and I've had a chance to talk about these with our interim CAO, and we'll see about getting that done before the rain sets in if possible. I'll mention a little bit more about the feasibility of the Duke Road East Trail. That was discussed, and we had a great turnout from residents who are part of the Albert Head neighborhood group. So there was discussion about ongoing work that's been done around trail maintenance, and I just want to pass on thanks to Mark Atherton, Ryan Carter, and then Gord Sedola, who actually went out there and removed trees that had fallen on the trail. And we also had a look at the subdivision application for the Beckingham Road proposal. So that is an 18-lot subdivision, and if you want to have a look at it, it's in the PTASC minutes or agenda package. And so a big theme of the meeting on November 21st was a sense, and this came up a number of times by the PTASC members, that they're not being effectively or respectfully engaged by either staff or council. And this was conveyed decisively by Mark Atherton, and he acknowledges that this is one of the reasons why he's considering stepping away. So Mark did cite a lack of, like for example, lack of response to recommendations that come from PTAS, issues that have happened in the past around actions taken or not taken, particularly around roadside trails, and again, input that PTAS may have provided that was not kind of affirmed or just even recognized. One of the concerns specifically that was raised was about the trail repairs at Ash Mountain, and that PTAS was not consulted before the repairs were actually considered complete. And this, they acknowledged, was a bit of a slap because it was them who, of course, who developed that trail, and there was clearly damage done to it. And I do recognize that, PTAS should have been consulted before that was actually considered complete. So one of the ideas was that PTAS has requested that we get together with them, as we did earlier this year, but in a more focused way at a joint PTAS council meeting. And I'm happy to coordinate that, but before I did that, I wanted to get your thoughts on what some of those comments are, just a summary of them, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry that PTAS is feeling undervalued and that we don't take their comments to heart. I think we do. But certainly having a joint PTAS council meeting chaired by the community planning's chair, who is the liaison to the parks and trails, would be advantageous for all groups. And I think that would be really great, because then we could hear firsthand what their concerns are, and always in favor of face-to-face communications to try and maneuver through sticky situations. So I think that would be a great idea, Grant. Okay. And thanks for bringing this to our attention. And I would hope that Mark would stay as chair of PTAS, because he has been exceptionally productive and very good at his job over the last 20 or so years. I understand he's tired. I hope other people step up. But it is a different community because they put so much, not only in the meetings and on paper, but with their boots on the ground too. So I thank them all for that, and of course thank Ellen and Lee for their participation over the last 2 decades. So with that, I would suggest a meeting. I like that idea. Great. Thank you.
And Mayor Little, you would know the hard work that PTAS does, because you were the last council liaison, and as I understand it, we're very involved on the ground as well. So great. Councillor Brown.
Thanks. I've heard about this disquiet from PTAS since before I was elected. And we had a meeting here about respectful workplace policy that Mark attended, and he mentioned it again there. And that's, it was much more recently. Like, we've been around this council table for a bit now. And when we talked about it, it seemed like it was from issues that have occurred before. And I don't know, Mayor Little, if you can explain what the issues were, or Councillor Shukin, what are the issues now? Like, the way that we work with, the way that I do the liaison with MEASC is that we have referred issues from council, or MEASC comes up with an issue themselves, either way, with our terms of reference. And then we bring forward the advice and recommendations to council. Maybe I'm being more formal on that. Maybe his help would be a help. It comes forward in our minutes, and then we have it laid out. Here's the motion. We discuss it here, and then each recommendation or result here, I go back to the committee, and we go through each one and say, what did council do, and why did they decide what they did? And that, I think, is fundamental to working with these groups, because PTASC, like MEASC, and like I presume Healthy Communities and the Buffer Land Working Group, people putting in volunteer hours here on our behalf and for the community, and we really need to respect them and support them in what's going on. So I think if we could have a sort of a direct line from this is a recommendation, this is our response at council table, and go back to them with it, I think that might be a big help, at least for our part of it. And I'm very sorry that people are feeling out of sorts, because I think it's, I noticed your respect and recognition they've earned, and I'm saying they've earned, heck, they joined the committee. regardless, we want to respect them and recognize people who are putting in all the time. And as Mayor Little mentions, this is a very different committee because of the physical labor going along with it. So many more hours are put in by this group, boots on the ground, as compared to our other committees, which are more paper-oriented discussion, and hours are spent differently. Anyway, I would appreciate the meeting and look forward to it.
Yeah. And I will acknowledge that that is one of Mark Atherton's concerns, is that there's often a lack of clarity on direction from the council or the committee table to PTASC. That's what Mark has mentioned. It would be good if we can find a way of clarifying how we can be better that way, and I will take responsibility for that in this current term for sure. So that is I think one of the points that Mark has raised. But any further comments? Okay.
Just the timing of the meeting, we should be sensitive to all of the demands we have on staff.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That might be in a new year, I suppose.
So I would make a motion that we ask staff to book a joint council PTASC meeting as soon as, I'm going to use the word practicable, to account for the demands on staff and our time and PTASC time as well. So seconder from Councilor Gray, seconded. Discussion? Hearing no further discussion, we'll call the question. All in favor? Great, thank you very much. Sorry to inform you that the councilor's update is not yet done. Sorry, not funny anymore. I just want to mention the Duke Road East Roadside Trail Feasibility Study. So PTASC members, Ron Aubrey and Ryan Carter and myself, we formed a little subcommittee, and we're now working with members of the Albert Head Neighborhood Association on looking at the feasibility of a roadside trail. So we did a walk on Saturday. It was lovely. And Duke Road East is wonderful. But there are some challenges to doing an actual roadside trail there, one of which is going to be understanding what the statutory right-of-way allowance is, how much there is there. But there, so, and one of the actions that came from that is the neighbors are going to try and find the pins that might be, or the survey markers that might be available in that area. Our hope is to meet within the next 2 weeks and come up with more of a game plan. But there are definitely some challenges, but some very smart people and dedicated people. So, Councilor Peck.
This is just a point, because we just went through this on the Healthy Communities Committee, and is that the residents involved in the Albert Head Neighborhood Group can't be part of your subcommittee.
Yeah.
Officially. So, and we did find that out from Ms. Hanson to get the correct decision on it. So the subcommittee can only be made up of members of the actual PTASC group.
Thank you. Yeah, I did hear that from Ms. Hanson actually as well. So, yeah. Great. One final thing. So the Complete Communities grant application. So we discussed this at the October 23rd meeting. The chief brought in reviewed the opportunity for us. And I did offer to coordinate the development of the grant application for the program. I set off to do work, and I got a fair bit. But as I went on with this grant, I realized that I don't think we should actually apply for it. There are a lot of other projects underway. There's going to be forthcoming demands on staff and volunteers. And the nature of the grant is maybe not quite what we want Metchosin to be, particularly around, again, Councillor Gray mentioned this, the 15-minute community around shopping, education, healthcare. That suggests growth in a community that maybe right now is not necessarily wanting to go that way. So I am going to recommend that we not pursue this. If somebody wants to take it on, I'm happy to share the information that I put together and go from there. So, Councillor Gray.
I'll make a motion that we recommend to council that we not proceed with the grant application for complete communities.
Sure. So, okay, further discussion? Councillor Donaldson?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. After this came to council, I got to thinking of a comment that our former mayor had made when we apply for grants and we do studies and then we just shelve them. And that was when I was on Healthy Communities. And it was a $30,000 grant that was sponsored through the district. And when I did the PowerPoint presentation after almost 2 years of working with this, the one thing I did say is there's no reason for it to be sitting on a shelf. We can pull it off at any time. So we still do have that document available that actually talks about a lot of different parts of the core at least, and how we can do connectivity and various projects. It included a lot of diagrams as well, but they're only diagrams, they're not replication of what we really want. I would suggest that we actually pull that off the shelf and start looking at it, reviewing what we could phase in or not. After we do some other visioning, as we know there's going to be one started that this week. So this is timely to just put this aside.
Great. Okay. Any further comments? So I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Mayor Little is opposed. Thank you. And that's it for my councillor update. So I was going to tell the story about the tick, but saw a tick on the wall in the middle of the night. I thought it was a spider, but it was a tick. So they're out there. Just be careful. Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? So moved by Mayor Little and Councillor Gray, second. All in favor? Thank you. We're adjourned.